"I don't want toys, Mom. I just want a dad," said the alien girl. Then a human knelt. Sci-Fi HFY. The space station Vierx 9 floated like a metal city between the stars. Ships of every shape and color moved around it, carrying beings from hundreds of worlds. Lights flashed, languages mixed, and machines hummed without rest. For most species, this place was about trade, profit, and power. Feelings were not important here. Humans were new to this galaxy. They had only joined the Galactic Union a few years ago, after a hard and costly first contact war. Because of that, many species looked at humans with doubt. Humans were smaller than most, lived shorter lives, and relied on emotions instead of pure logic. Many aliens believed humans would never truly matter. Inside one of the largest halls of the station, a public charity event was taking place. After many galactic wars, millions of children had lost parents. The Union believed stability could be maintained by giving resources early. Tables were filled with advanced toys, floating cubes, light-shaping animals, learning orbs that could teach languages in days. Officials smiled for cameras, proud of their generosity. Near the edge of the hall stood an alien woman named Sylith. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and dark. She belonged to the Kalari species, known for intelligence and calm thinking. In her arms was her young daughter, Tira. Tira was small even for her species. She clutched her mother's clothing tightly, her thin tail wrapped around Sylith's arm. An official floated closer and offered a glowing toy that changed shape when touched. Tira looked at it for a moment, then turned her face away. "I don't want toys, Mom," she said softly. Her voice was clear but full of sadness. "I just want a dad." The words were simple, but they caused a strange silence around them. Sylith froze. Her chest tightened. Her mate had died 2 cycles ago during a border conflict. Kalari bonds were usually brief, based on genetic contracts and shared goals. Losing a partner was not meant to hurt this much, but it did. She had tried everything, education, comfort, logic, to explain loss to her daughter. Around them, other aliens shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, others watched with curiosity. Wanting a parent instead of resources was inefficient. "Tira," Sylith said gently, "you know your father cannot return." "I know," Tira replied, "but I still want one." The official pulled the toy back slowly, unsure what to say. Cameras turned elsewhere. A few steps away stood a human man in a simple dark uniform. He was part of station security, hired mostly for crowd control. His name was Daniel Reyes. Daniel had been watching quietly. Humans had learned to stay quiet in places like this. He was tall for a human, with tired eyes and a scar along his jaw. Years ago, he had lost his wife and young son when a transport ship was destroyed during the early days of first contact. Since then, he had moved from place to place, never staying long. When he heard the girl's words, something inside him stopped. He tried to look away. He told himself it was not his place. This was alien business, alien pain, but the child's voice stayed in his head. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. "I don't want toys, I just want a dad." Daniel's hands tightened into fists. He remembered his son asking him once why stars were so far away. He remembered promising to always be there. Before he could think more, his feet moved. Gasps spread softly through the nearby crowd as the human stepped forward, crossing an invisible line. He stopped in front of Sylith and her daughter, then did something no one expected. He knelt. Kneeling was a human gesture, not common among most species. It meant lowering oneself, showing respect, making oneself smaller. To many aliens, it looked like submission. Daniel met Tira's eyes at her level. "I heard what you said," he said gently, speaking in simple galactic standard. "And I'm sorry." Tira looked at him with surprise. Humans were rare here and usually distant. She studied his face, his strange skin tone, his forward-facing eyes. "You are sad too," she said after a moment. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, I am." Sylith stepped back half a step, alarmed. Human, she said carefully, this is a private family matter. Daniel did not argue. He kept his voice calm. I know, I don't mean to interfere, I just wanted to listen. Most species did not listen unless there was value. That alone confused the watchers. Tira tilted her head. Did you lose your dad? Daniel swallowed. No, I lost my son. The word carried weight. Even those unfamiliar with humans understood loss when they heard it. Tira loosened her grip on her mother and leaned forward slightly. Does it still hurt? Every day, Daniel answered honestly. There was no logic in what happened next. No law supported it. No cultural guide explained it. Tira reached out and touched Daniel's hand. Her fingers were warm, Silith's breath caught. Tira, it's okay, Mom, the child said quietly. He's real. That word real sent a ripple through the nearby minds. Many species could sense emotion faintly, but humans seemed to project it strongly. Daniel's pain, care, and honesty were plain even without telepathy. A pair of union officials moved closer, concern on their faces. One of them spoke sharply. Human, step back. Emotional influence across species is restricted. Daniel did not pull his hand away, but he looked up at them. I'm not influencing her. I'm just here. You are violating protocol, the official replied. Then I'll leave, Daniel said, but not before saying this. He turned back to Tira. I can't replace your father, and I can't promise things will be easy. Humans are not perfect. We get tired, we make mistakes. But when we choose family, we don't stop choosing. The hall was completely silent now. Tira looked up at her mother. Mom, can someone choose to be a dad? Silith's mind raced. Biology said no. Law said no. Society said no. Yet her daughter's eyes were brighter than they had been in cycles. I don't know, Silith admitted. Daniel stood slowly, ready to step away. You don't have to decide anything. I just wanted her to know wanting a parent is not wrong. As he turned, Tira held onto his sleeve. Please don't go, she said. That simple request shook something deep within him. Around them, beings who had conquered worlds, calculated wars, and optimized survival watched a human hesitate, not because of fear, but because of care. No one in the hall understood it fully, but something important had begun. Not a war, not a trade, a connection. And the galaxy, loud and uncaring as it was, would never look at humanity the same way again. The hall did not return to noise right away after the humans stopped moving. Many beings simply stared. For a place built on trade and schedules, time seemed to slow. Union officials finally reacted. One of them, tall and thin with metallic skin, raised a hand. Human Daniel Reyes, you will step away from the child now. Daniel felt Tira's fingers tighten on his sleeve. He did not pull away, but he also did not turn back to her. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself again so he was closer to her height. I have to listen to them, he said softly, but I'm not angry, and I'm not leaving because I don't care. Tira looked confused. Adults always leave, she said. That hurt more than Daniel expected. Silith stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her voice was controlled, but fear sat just below it. My child is not property. If you remove him by force, she will be harmed emotionally. The officials hesitated. Emotional harm was difficult to measure, and the Kelari were known for honesty. Cameras had quietly turned back toward them. Too many eyes were watching now. A senior coordinator arrived, floating on a grav platform. Explain, they said. Silith spoke slowly, choosing words with care. This human listened. He did not offer objects or commands. My child responded, that is all. The coordinator studied Daniel. You understand that cross-species parental bonding is restricted? Yes, Daniel said. I'm not asking for custody. I'm not asking for anything. Then why are you here? The coordinator asked. Daniel looked back at Tira. Because she asked for a dad, and no one should be ignored for wanting that. The answer was not logical, but it was clear. After a long pause, the coordinator made a decision. The event is over for this family. Escort them to a private chamber. The human will accompany them under observation. Murmurs spread through the hall. Some were shocked. Some were curious. A few looked unsettled. As they walked through quieter corridors, Tira still held Daniel's hand. Scythe watched the human closely. She searched for hidden intent, manipulation, anything dangerous. She found none, only patience. Inside the chamber, the door sealed softly. The room was simple, designed for diplomatic talks. Scythe finally spoke. "You should know," she said, "Kellari children do not attach easily. What you did, it may have lasting effects." Daniel nodded. "So do human children." Tira climbed onto one of the low seats and swung her legs. "Are you staying?" she asked. "I can stay for a bit," Daniel said, "if your mom is okay with that." Scythe hesitated, then nodded. "For now." Time passed slowly. No one spoke for a while, then Tira asked questions. Simple ones. Why humans had hair. Why they smiled with teeth. Why Daniel's eyes looked tired. Daniel answered honestly, using easy words. He did not hide sadness, but he did not let it take over. Eventually, a medical officer entered to check on Scythe. During the scan, a soft alarm sounded. The officer frowned. "You were injured earlier. Internal stress damage, you hit it." Scythe's knees weakened. Daniel moved without thinking, steadying her. "Tira," Scythe said, forcing calm, "I need to go with them for a short time." Tira's tail wrapped tightly around Daniel's arm. "You'll come back." "Yes," Scythe said. Then she looked at Daniel. "Watch her." It was not a request, it was trust. As the door closed, Daniel found himself alone with an alien child who believed in him more than he believed in himself. They sat together. Tira leaned against him. Her breathing slowed. "You don't smell like the others," she said. Daniel smiled slightly. "Is that good or bad?" "Good," she replied. "You smell steady." He did not know what that meant, but he liked it. Minutes later, the station lights flickered. At first, it was small. Then alarms began to echo through the corridors. A calm voice announced, "Attention. Power instability detected in outer sectors." Daniel's training kicked in. He stood, lifting Tira gently. "We need to stay alert." The door opened suddenly. Smoke drifted in from the hall. A security drone rolled past, damaged. A sharp impact shook the floor. Tira clutched his neck. "What's happening?" "Something bad," Daniel said, "but I've got you." He moved into the hallway, scanning for threats. Other aliens ran in panic. The power failure spread. Lights died section by section. Daniel saw it then, an armed group forcing their way toward the lower refugee levels. Not raiders. Political extremists who believed the Union wasted resources on the weak. They fired energy weapons at control nodes, not caring who was nearby. Daniel ducked into cover, shielding Tira with his body. He activated his comm. "Security breach. Multiple hostiles. I need backup," Static answered. No backup was coming. A blast knocked debris loose. Daniel moved again, fast but careful. He knew one thing clearly. He would not let harm reach the child in his arms. They reached a locked service corridor. Daniel forced it open manually, straining. Inside was dark but safe. Tira pressed her face against his chest. "Dad," she whispered, the word unsure. Daniel froze for half a second. "Yes," he said quietly, "I'm here." Explosions echoed farther away. Daniel waited, listening, calculating. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but they adapted. When a hostile rounded the corner, Daniel acted. He used the environment, timing, and surprise. He disarmed the attacker without lethal force, locking them inside a storage unit. Soon after, station security finally regained control. Lights returned. When Scythe found them, her face went pale. "Tira." "I'm okay," Tira said quickly. "Dad kept me safe." The word echoed through the corridor. Officials heard it. Soldiers heard it. Daniel opened his mouth to correct her, but Scythe stopped him with a look. She knelt in front of her daughter. "Do you understand what you are saying?" Tira nodded. "He stayed. He didn't run. He chose." Scythe stood slowly and faced Daniel. "You risked your life." "Yes," he said simply. "For my child." "Yes." She took a long breath. then this is no longer a moment. This is a question the galaxy must answer. Around them, aliens watched a human hold an alien child like she belonged there. And for the first time, the idea did not seem impossible. The station was not the same after the attack. Repairs were underway, but the feeling had changed. Corridors were quieter. Guards stood closer together. Trust, once assumed, now felt fragile. Daniel remained under observation. He did not mind. His attention stayed on Tira. She stayed close to him, following his steps, copying how he sat and how he looked around before moving. Silith noticed everything. Kalari children did not usually mirror behavior. They learned through data, not imitation. Yet Tira watched Daniel like he was a guide star. Union investigators questioned everyone involved. They wanted clear answers. They did not get them. One asked Daniel, "Why did you engage the attackers alone?" Daniel answered, "Because someone needed to." Another asked, "Why protect an alien child at personal risk?" Daniel paused before replying, "Because she trusted me." That answer appeared in the official report. Many found it useless. Others found it troubling. Silith was called before a council panel. Screens surrounded her, each showing a different species. Their voices were calm but firm. "Your child has formed an attachment," one said. "This may damage her development." Silith held her posture, or it may save it. "You are proposing continued contact with the human," another said, "possibly more." "I am proposing stability," Silith replied. "My child lost her father. This human did not replace him. He stood beside her." The council requested data. Silith provided it. Stress markers in Tira had dropped. Sleep cycles had improved. Emotional responses were healthier. The council was silent for a long time. Meanwhile, Daniel sat with Tira in a quiet observation lounge. She was drawing shapes on a glass surface. "What are those?" Daniel asked. "My family," she said. He saw 3 figures, one tall, one medium, one small. He did not ask which one he was. Later that cycle, alarms sounded again, not an attack. A system failure in the lower habitat ring. Thousands lived there. Power, air, and gravity fluctuated. Evacuation teams moved in, but coordination failed. Species argued over priority. Protocols conflicted. Daniel watched from a security post. He saw confusion spreading. Fear. He made a decision. He turned to his supervisor. "Send me down there." "You're under restriction," the supervisor replied. "Then lift it," Daniel said, "or I go anyway." The supervisor studied him. "You don't give up, do you?" "No," Daniel answered. "Humans don't." Daniel was sent with a mixed team. Engineers, medics, and volunteers from different species. None of them had worked together before. The habitat ring was worse than expected. Gravity failed in sections. Children cried. Elderly beings floated helplessly. Daniel took charge not by shouting but by acting. He secured lines. He carried those who could not move. He gave simple orders that made sense. Others followed. At one point, a ceiling panel collapsed. Daniel pushed 2 others clear and took the hit himself. His shoulder screamed with pain, but he stayed standing. A Kalari medic shouted, "You are injured." "I can still move," Daniel replied. "Check the kids first." They did. Hours passed. When the ring stabilized, casualties were low. Survival rates were higher than predicted. Footage spread quickly. A human lifting alien children. A human shielding others with his own body. A human refusing rest. Across the station, opinions shifted. Back in the medical wing, Daniel sat quietly while his shoulder was treated. Tira sat beside him holding his uninjured hand. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Why did you go back?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "Because people needed help, and because I want you to grow up in a safe place." Tira nodded seriously. "That's what dads do." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. He did not correct her. The council reconvened. They reviewed reports, psychological scans, behavioral shifts among witnesses. Something unexpected had occurred. Other species had begun copying human behavior, staying with injured. protecting non-kin, choosing cooperation over calculation. One council member said, "This is dangerous." Another replied, "Or necessary." Silith was called again. This time the tone was different. "You may proceed with a trial guardianship," the council said. "Limited." Monitored, Silith felt her chest tight. Under what conditions? The human must consent, the child must choose freely, either may end it. Silith bowed her head. "That is fair." Daniel was brought in. He listened carefully. "This will not be easy," the council warned. "Your species is emotionally volatile." Daniel nodded. "So is life. You will face scrutiny, judgment." Daniel looked at Tira. She looked back at him, eyes steady. "I've faced worse," he said. "The agreement was made, not adoption, not ownership, guardianship." A word the galaxy felt safer with. That evening, Silith watched Daniel and Tira share a simple meal. They laughed softly. Nothing dramatic, nothing strange. And yet it felt revolutionary. Later, Silith spoke to Daniel privately. "My species does not say this easily," she said. "But I thank you," Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she replied. "That is why it matters." Across the station, conversations changed. Parents held children closer. Soldiers hesitated before acting. Leaders questioned old assumptions. Humans were not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most advanced, but they stayed. And in a galaxy that often moved on without looking back, that made all the difference. Somewhere deep in the station, a child slept peacefully for the first time in many cycles. And a human sat nearby, keeping watch, not because he was ordered to, but because he chose to. The station had returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing was quite the same. Daniel moved through the corridors with Tira close behind, her small hand gripping his. Her curiosity remained endless, but now it was paired with trust and confidence. Where she had once looked to her mother alone, she now looked to Daniel too, as if seeing two pillars of safety in a galaxy that often felt unstable. Silith walked beside them, keeping a careful eye on both. Her initial wariness had softened, replaced by cautious hope. She had witnessed a human act in ways no alien parent or guardian had ever done. Protectiveness, courage, and patience were traits the Kalari valued intellectually, but seeing them in action, combined with genuine care, had shifted something deep inside her. Daniel carried Tira's favorite small object, a simple drawing pad she refused to leave behind during the emergency. She scribbled little figures and stars, her imagination blooming under his quiet encouragement. "Draw us," he suggested gently. "Draw how we feel when we're safe." Tira's small fingers traced shapes quickly. The pad filled with human and alien figures holding hands. "Is this okay?" she asked, looking up at him. "It's perfect," Daniel said with a soft smile. "That's exactly how it should be." Even the observers from the council who remained in the station could see the subtle change. It was not loud or dramatic. It was calm, persistent, and deep. Others who had once considered humans fragile or overly emotional could now see that they had an unusual strength, consistency and care, even when the risk was personal. The council convened again, this time to discuss long-term solutions. News of Daniel's actions and his bond with Tira had spread. Reports and images from the station's emergency circulated among alien species, sparking discussions about the nature of humanity. Analysts debated quietly. Why did humans form attachments so quickly? Why did they risk themselves for beings not of their own kind? Scientists ran scans of stress markers, neural responses, and emotional signals. The results were staggering. Humans were rare not for strength or technology, but for empathy that translated into action and resilience that persisted under pressure. Tira had watched these meetings from a distance. She understood enough to sense the importance. Every discussion about her, every careful calculation of protocols felt strange to her young mind. But when she glanced at Daniel, all the complexity of the galaxy seemed smaller. He had chosen her. He had stood for her. and he had never looked away. One afternoon, Daniel took Tira to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, clusters of light and color that most species had long learned to see as mere scenery. Humans, however, always seemed to see something more, a story, a future, a connection. "Why do humans stare at stars?" Tira asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "Because they remind us that no matter how small we feel, we can still reach. We can still make choices that matter." Tira nodded, thinking seriously. "I want to reach," she said. "And you will," Daniel said, tightening his hold on her small hand. "We'll do it together." Back in the station, the process of formal guardianship began. It was unlike adoption in human culture. Legal agreements, monitoring devices, and council oversight made the relationship official in the galaxy's eyes. But the real bond had already been formed. Titles, rules, and data could not capture what Daniel and Tira had built: trust, courage, and choice. Syleth observed this carefully. She had always valued logic, but she could not deny the effect of Daniel's presence. Tira laughed more freely now. She slept more soundly. She explored the station with curiosity instead of fear. And Daniel, though tired and often in pain from his previous injuries, seemed renewed by responsibility. It was a human paradox. Giving care made him stronger. The media spread the story quickly. Across dozens of systems, beings watched the images and reports of a human protecting an alien child. Commentators debated the implications. Philosophers wrote essays. Parents across species reconsidered how they raised their children. Military analysts studied the actions and concluded that humans, while small, were strategically unpredictable, able to act with focus and courage because they valued life differently. One evening, after the station had quieted, Daniel and Tira returned to the observation deck. She leaned against his side and pointed at a small, faint star far away. "Will we ever reach that one?" she asked. Daniel lifted her gently so she could press her hands to the glass. "Maybe, but even if we don't, it's not about reaching every star. It's about choosing which ones matter and who we take with us." Tira smiled. "Then I choose you." Daniel hugged her close, careful not to drop her, careful not to break the fragile trust they had built. The galaxy outside was vast and sometimes cruel, but within this small space, safety and warmth were real. Days turned into cycles. The council gradually relaxed monitoring, impressed by the consistent emotional stability displayed by both Daniel and Tira. Other species took note. Slowly, policies began to shift. Cross-species guardianship, once taboo and limited, was reconsidered. Stories of humans acting as protectors spread in forums, conferences, and informal networks. The idea was radical but also logical in the most human way. Choosing to act with care created ripples. Syleth finally spoke to Daniel privately. She did not kneel or bow, as was the Kalari custom. Instead, she simply met his gaze. "You have changed how I see humanity," she said softly. "Not with words, not with strength, but with choices, with care." Daniel shook his head, humble. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Syleth replied firmly. "Most would not, most would leave. Most would calculate risks and walk away. You stayed." That evening, Daniel sat with Tira as she prepared to sleep. Her small fingers traced the scars on his hands, traces of the fight, of the effort, of the moments when he had risked everything. "You hurt yourself for me," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I did." "You're my dad," she said simply, as if that explained everything. "Yes," he whispered back. "I am." The words were light, but they carried weight. Across the galaxy, in quiet data centers, analysts began to notice a subtle pattern. Wherever humans acted with care, others began to respond. Trust spread. Cooperation increased. Communities rebuilt faster after crises. It was not force or technology, it was humanity. Months later, the station held a celebration for all children who had lost families. Tira ran ahead, laughing, with Daniel walking close behind, watching, ready to step in if needed. Other species observed, noting the human's instinctive guidance. He did not command. He did not control, he simply acted with attention and choice. The council watched too. They had made the rules. They had monitored every step, and yet they could not deny the result. Humans, small and fragile in appearance, had the power to redefine family, to create unity where none existed, to show courage where others relied on fear. Scylla observed her daughter hugging Daniel tightly. For the first time in cycles, she felt a full sense of peace. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but her child had found someone who would stay, someone who had chosen her. Daniel lifted Tira onto his shoulders and she waved at other children. Laughter filled the hall, blending with alien languages. It was messy, imperfect, and alive. And somewhere in the quiet of the observation deck, stars burned steadily. Small, fragile humans could not reach them all. They could not control them, but they could choose which ones mattered, and in doing so, change the galaxy. Tira yawned, resting her head against Daniel's. "I like this," she murmured. "Me too," Daniel replied softly. Scylla smiled. The galaxy outside could continue to judge, to doubt, and to measure by power. But here, in this small room of laughter, care, and choice, something far stronger had begun. Humans did not dominate. Humans did not conquer. Humans chose, and the galaxy slowly, quietly began to notice. Daniel looked down at Tira and whispered, "We'll keep choosing together." Tira smiled, her small hands clutching his. "Together," she repeated. The stars outside stretched on, endless and bright. And for the first time, a human and an alien child felt that the galaxy was not only vast, it was full of possibility. In the quiet heart of Viewership 9, a simple truth had taken hold. Strength was not in power alone, but in the courage to care, to stay, and to choose love across worlds. And so, the story of Daniel and Tira began, not as an act of law, nor of biology, but as a quiet revolution of humanity in a galaxy that needed it more than it realized.